Hi, I've got a podcast I want to play. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thom and Joe show. I am Tom.
I am Joe. And this ain't no party.
This ain't no disco. We ain't
this ain't no fooling around.
Yes, indeed. We are talking today about we're talking today about Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads album, live album / extremely influential movie, which celebrates 40 years of its United States release. Today, October the 19th, 2024. Which somebody should have probably told A24 about because they released it last September.
Yes.
Yes. For the 39th anniversary. Well, the Talking Heads were never particularly normal in their sort of presentation or indeed in their way of going about things, so we'll just assume it's something down to that. Anyway, yeah, we're talking about Stop Making Sense, a live concert film of Talking Heads during their tour for the album.
And I'm sorry if you hear like random noises here and there. I have to record in the living room just because we're doing some work in the bedroom, so I don't have my like enclosed atmosphere right now.
That's fine. You're sounding good, Joe. So, where do we start with this? Because there are multiple angles we could take with this. We could. Who are the right? I think we start at the beginning. Who are the Talking Heads?
The Talking Heads are a band that kind of formed in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And then they just became one of the most influential bands of all time.
Yeah. So the band sort of basically, obviously, by the point that we get to Speaking in Tongues, which is basically what this was touring for. This is so Speaking in Tongues is the Talking Heads' 5th album. It sort of basically marks the sort of the next phase of Talking Heads, because basically, apart from their debut album 77, the other 3 albums, more songs about food and art, buildings and food, which should indicate what sort of band we're dealing with here. Fear of Music and Remain in Light, which are basically explored, arts, basically melded their sort of art school and I think obviously new wave to, Afrobeat and, the music particularly of Parliament Funkadelic, which is ironic because Bernie Worrell will become the keyboard player for this tour and obviously appear in this film, and the musician Fela Kuti. Along for the ride, of course, is Brian Eno, who seems to come into these episodes more often than not. The band, by this point, is obviously David Byrne, Chris Franz, who plays... Byrne just basically plays everything. I mean, he plays, I think, mostly guitar on this, but I think he obviously is a fairly talented multi-instrumentalist. You've got Chris Franz, who plays drums. Tina Weymouth, again, who seems to play lots of things but primarily bass, and Jerry Harrison, who again plays most of the other things but is the band's other guitarist. And I think it's fair to say by like 1983, 1984, the Talking Heads, or sort of Talking Heads, because obviously they're one of these bands where the definitive "the" is not applicable here. They are certainly at their commercial peak. They're arguably at their sort of critical peak. And they go as obviously bands at this point are sort of, bands when you get to this sort of imperial level go, let's make a movie.
Yes. And also Jonathan Demme kind of helped with that because he did go to a Talking Heads concert and he said, there's a movie here we can make. So he did.
Yeah. I mean, Demme, for his part, was making exploitation films in the early 70s and working for Roger Corman, because everybody who has ever made an exploitation film in the early 70s was working for Roger Corman.
To tell you where Jonathan Demme was kind of at this point. He has a small role in the movie The Incredible Melting Man, which was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, obviously he would go on, obviously post making this, to making a certain little film called The Silence of the Lambs and Philadelphia, and then more concert films, including one for Neil Young, and the last film he made during his obviously his lifetime, which was Justin Timberlake and the Tennessee Kids 2016. An interesting career, to say the least. I mean, we kind of have to put rock, music films and concert films, I think, a little bit into context, because this is really the film I feel that typifies them. I mean, obviously you've had stuff before this. You've had stuff like, obviously, The Last Waltz, which obviously covers the final live appearance by the band, which is, obviously directed by a guy who you might have heard of called Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
Yeah, and
we
obviously
have heard of the Martin Scorsese.
And
certainly comic fans have heard of him.
Certainly comic fans. And obviously, things like Led Zeppelin's The Song Remains the Same. But, they are the sort of the reserve of bands with, I think a theatrical sort of bent, I think it's fair to say. Or, to cover a particular point in a, like a band's farewell, concert sort of thing. That's really what they were up, and I think it's fair to say up until Stop Making Sense. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're kind of a band that were modern to the point of postmodern, and I think that's kind of the attitude that is right for how to describe the band, because there's so many things, but what a Talking Head song is when you hear it, mostly because of David Byrne's voice.
Yeah, which we'll get on to sort of talking about, because that is one of the most idiosyncratic voices in modern rock music. It's that sort of there is nothing else I can describe. The only way I can describe David Byrne's voice is, once you've heard David Byrne's voice, you will not unhear David Byrne's voice. It's this sort of it's a quintessential sort of new wave voice. I mean, if you compare it to a lot of the singers who are around at that same period, like Morrissey, like Sting. They all have their visual idiosyncrasies, but I think Burns is like, it's one of these voices that when you hear it, it's just, that is David Byrne's voice, and you will hear it whenever David Byrne appears on something like, obviously he's done in more recent years, obviously for like St. Vincent, and again with Brian Eno, it's like, hey, it's David Byrne.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the song quality, you attribute it to, he kind of formed his voice into like a southern preacher to a certain point, but, kind of a businessman, kind of, this commentary and not commentary on what the modern life was at that time. Yeah,
I mean, as I said, the Talking Heads sort of basically nail what they're about on their second album by calling it more songs about buildings and food. And they obviously, I mean, in more recent years, Byrne has self-diagnosed as autistic, and or certainly on the spectrum, and obviously you can infer from his, because he was obviously the band's principal lyricist, a degree to which these are the views of somebody who who is neurodiverse, and is commenting or sort of trying, as we'll get on to talking later, obviously when we get into certain songs of the album, they are a neurodiverse man's sort of view of the world and the things in it.
Yes. It's sort, and it can be talked about like how the band like had some surprising like friction, just because Byrne was this creative mind who like kind of did things his way and how he wanted to do it, and like didn't put some things in mind, like I was just listening to the commentary track, and he didn't even want glasses of water for any of the musicians or anybody on stage because he felt it distracted from the work. And He said, "Well, I was kind of being a little dick at the time."
Yeah.
And that's how he puts it.
Yeah.
So
particularly
he
when
kind
they've
of had that friction.
Particularly because obviously now they've obviously done the tour for, you know, the cinematic release of the A24 remark. So A24, we'll obviously get onto what A24 did to Stop Making Sense, because I mean I was lucky enough to go to the cinema because the Talking Heads are one of my favourite bands, and see like the A24 remaster, etc. It is very, very good, and I think they need to be commended for their work, and kind of almost wish A24 was doing more in the re-release market rather than, you know, their sterling work in doing whatever it is that they do, you know, whatever else they want to do. But yeah, they obviously there was no small work. This was no small feat to put this film back together again, and, you know, add in various material to this, given this is, you know, even though this is a fairly mainstream, you know, piece of a 40-year-old film. The other sort of the major element I do want to sort of talk about before we move on is obviously, you know, apps. Or should we just let's get straight into it? Right. So we can stick the anecdotes in around the corner. So the Talking Heads obviously on Stop Making Sense are sort of not just the Talking Heads. So this is basically, as I said, it is a film date. I think 3 film dates of their as I said, Speaking in Tongues tour. Along for the ride are backing singers Lynn Mabry and Edna Holt, Alex Weir, Bernie Wall, who obviously, as I said, is the keyboardist for the Funkadelic, and Steve Scales, who is the band's percussionist. And it's sort of the first thing I want to talk about is, you know, the staging of this, because the staging of this is like it is in itself influential. So when I went and saw, you know, Nine Inch Nails when they were doing, or you know, when Nine Inch Nails did the Tension tour, which was 2013 2014, Trent Reznor, the band's leader, sort of basically went, yeah, this is heavily influenced by the Stop Making Sense thing. You know, there are like so many tours that have basically taken this as a template to go, right, stark staging, very little, you know, there's no, you know, no props on stage. You know, the stage is almost bare in this. You know, the you know, everything, you know, the lighting is largely, you know, untreated spotlight. Most of the stuff that is brought onto stage or off stage, you know, like obviously drums, you know, keyboards, etc., is very much, you know, brought onto stage. You know, there's not like, oh, we're going to close the curtains while everything while we change, you know, while the band, you know, the guitarist comes out the front and plays. No, this is very much there is almost a sense of the artifice and, you know, the stage-like elements of, you know, doing a live concert with, you know, a lot with this, you know, in some places, you know, nearly a dozen musicians on stage.
And to comment on the Nine Inch Nails thing, like if you watch his famous performance at Lollapalooza, where it's just like, it has a very similar setup to where it starts with him just doing one thing, and then, you know, gets out to the rest of the band, except the rest of the band is mostly Trent Reznor.
And friends. Yeah.
And friends who we're not sure if their stuff is even plugged in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and everyone's, and, you know, obviously this is not the Woodstock performance we're talking about, because of that one everyone's covered in mud. Yeah, I don't think something the Talking Heads would particularly want to do. But this was especially ripe for filmmaking just because it was shot at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Which is known for hosting a lot of Broadway plays. Like after they left, they had to swap in with The King and I, and that's who was replacing them after, you know, they got done with this, you know, documentary and 3 nights of filming.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the thing, and obviously what Demi does for sort of the first few songs is it starts with Burn, and obviously, you know, members of the, this is what obviously what Nin copied, particularly on the Tension stories, would start with obviously Trent and, you know, filter out from there. But also, what is also really notable is how Demi and cinematographer Jordan Cronwell,
who shot Blade Runner.
Yep, the guy who shot Blade Runner. Is that it starts obviously very, very tight framing on Byrne, and it moves out when Tina Weymouth comes out, and it moves out when Chris Frantz comes out, and it moves out when I forgot his name bloody again. Jerry Harrison comes on to say, and the thing is about the stage for the Pantage stage, as because obviously it isn't designed to do, you know, big Broadway musicals, is a bloody massive stage. It is like it. I think the thing is for the Speaking in Tongues tour, I think they needed something like stages that had 20 meter deep and 60 wide, which when you consider, you know, the site, there are, you know, okay, there are 11 people on stage. There is a lot of space, you know, and a lot of empty, you know, particularly when on certain songs where the lighting is obviously turned, you know, turned down, it becomes, you know, spotlights, or particularly on you know, particularly on This Must Be the Place Now. You've no idea when it comes down to just one single lampshade or lamp and lampshade. You know, it uses that cavernous space, that sort of, you know, you know, the darkness to actually amplify. And obviously, you know, a lot of bands, you know, like U2 subsequently, obviously on a couple of their tours, have obviously used this sort of sense of like a single light bulb lighting the stage. You know, it is. We can talk for hours about every single tour that's basically taken an element or a couple of elements from this. Anyway, shall we talk about the big suit now, or the big suit in context, Joe?
Probably the big suit in context, just because it makes a statement, but it overshadows everything, despite just being being in the last
3 songs.
2 out of the 3 songs.
Yeah.
Because he takes it off, but he still has the giant pants.
Yeah. I mean, this giant suit has, I feel, overshadowed Byrne, like, full stop. You know, when A24 did the trailers to, you know, go, hey, we've got, you know, hold of, you know, Stop Making Sense, and we're going to re-release it to the bar. They had this really cute little vignette with, you know, David Byrne going to a dry cleaners and picking up the suit, and, you know, cycling across New York and putting it back on and going, look, we got the big suit, we got David, you know, this is going to be really fun, and, you know, there's the you know, obviously when David Byrne appears in The Simpsons, he's wearing the big suit. When Kermit does a little Talking Heads parody on, I think it was the Muppets Tonight. It's one of the more recent Muppet incarnations. He's wearing the big suit, and the big suit has sort of like not only overshadowed, you know, Stop Making Sense. I mean, it's on the poster, it's on the title card we're using here. But it has sort of like overshadowed David Byrne's entire and extremely rich, you know, creative thing. And I feel, given how big it is and how, you know, sort of, you know, much David Byrne feels, almost visually looks like he's trapped in it, I think that's quite quite amusing in a way. But we'll get to sort of the big suit in context later, I think.
Yes. Just
Yes.
because it is, you know, for one particular song, and then it's kind of there because, you know, he has to keep wearing it for the next song.
Yeah. I mean, they give him a song to go and change into it, which is like the sort of, again, the importance of the big C. Shall we go through this as we do in our normal fashion in sequential order, or have you got anything else generally you want to comment about before we move on?
Not really. We can just go.
Cool. So David Byrne arrives on stage with a tape recorder, and he puts the tape recorder going down. And I paraphrased him at the beginning of the episode because I feel we had to. As I said, he says, I want to play a tape. The tape is actually an 808 drum machine off stage, and he begins to play Psycho Killer, which is probably the first really famous song by the band. And, you know, it's in a stripped down sort of acoustic thing. You know, and it's a great little song. I mean, I will say I love the Talking Heads a lot during this episode, but it is sort of like, you know, this. Perhaps this is the thing, like, perhaps this is, people going, well, who's the first member of Talking Heads we're going to put on the stage? Well, it's going to be David Byrne, he is, doing this and the other, and, it's this slightly deranged piece of song, and then it gets to like the sort of section, obviously, and again, at this point, Demi and are framing this, really tightly, and David Byrne is doing this. I mean, David Byrne's like entire performance throughout this is far more choreographed than it looks. So it looks, random, and it looks sporadic, and it looks like he is, essentially falling about the stage. So obviously the tape recorder starts to skip. And obviously, because obviously it's a drum, it's essentially a drum loop on a tape recorder, and he starts going into this sort of like craze, sort of like flailing. That is a reference to Breathless, the Jean-Luc Godard film. So
it's also a thing he saw in a Gene Kelly movie. I can't remember what it was. So he kind of, that talks about like how far and wide their net goes as far as what all goes into their songs.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the Psycho Killer is first off, Psycho Killer has like a bridge in French, which actually was written by Tina Weymouth. And it's the first really big. I mean, I feel it has to sit here at the beginning of the set. It is. You get the big. You get the early big hit out of the way fine. And it's.
Just of note of coincidence that the song David Byrne says is about an introspective, like, serial killer who thinks he is a bit higher minded, and so much that he speaks French, or at least the French that he learned from high school. And then Demi went on to make Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal Lecter. So weird coincidences abound.
Indeed, there are a number of weird coincidences in this. And then Tina Weymouth comes onto stage for Heaven. I like Heaven, and obviously during Heaven there are uncredited. Lynn Mabry, one of the two backup singers, is also doing harmony vocals from backstage. I mean, this is the first sort of influence of Artifice. Yeah. There is like this third voice that you can't see, but there's something on thing. Heaven is a really nice song.
So this is one of my low-key favorites of the Talking Heads, just because there is something like poetic about it. Like, it could be this way you interpret it, and it could be that way you interpret it, depending on like who you are and how you're listening. Because it could be like, heaven is not heaven because like heaven is a place where nothing happens, or it could be like, this is a great place because like every kiss feels like the first time, and like nothing happens. There's nothing like keeping you down. There's nothing keeping you bound. And the little factoid I learned is that Heaven is a gay bar in London that is owned by Richard Branson. So that you could put whatever it is there you wanted.
Yeah. I don't think a number of quite prominent bands have played Heaven, and it is also where Paul Oakenfield, the DJ, cut his teeth as a major venue DJ, but apparently the Talking Heads have never actually played Heaven, which is surprising because I assume just Byrne was just wandering around London and went, "This is a nice place. Hello, Richard. Wait, this is a what? Okay, fair enough." I think it's a really sweet song, and it's and I feel that's the thing is the choice of the acoustic guitar, which Byrne plays essentially for about the first sort of like 5 or 6 numbers, does sort of like the Talking Heads have this very electronic sound, this very there's obviously like there's this fidgety element to them, obviously, and the guitar lines are often rather stark and rather that sort of juddering sort of sense that a lot of that sort of new wave music did. and to have that sort of like interpreted on acoustic guitar, where obviously you can't do distortion, and you can't do certain palm muting, etc. is a nice little touch. And then Chris Frantz turns up and on Thank You for Sending Me an Angel, which is another really pretty song.
Yeah, and here we get to my little thing about the Talking Heads. Like, the Talking Heads are a great band, and I do love what they do, and they are ultimately influential and this massive monument of a band. Like, I listened to 2 songs of the Talking Heads, and my brain goes, I'm good for the day. I don't need to listen to a full Talking Heads album, which is very problematic for when you're watching an entire documentary film.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. I was listening to the audio commentary track to the film, and I was enjoying the film more because I wasn't just engaging with the music, and my focus wasn't waning. I could see all of these little performance things from, Scales or Byrne or whoever else. And of course, all of these little things I wasn't noticing because, like, the music, like, my mind had adjusted to it, and it had just kind of floated into the background while I was watching it. And that's not to say this isn't a bad film. It's a terrific film. It's how my brain works, and it's how my brain processes the Talking Heads. There are very few bands where I can just sit there and listen to an entire album, and that kind of speaks to your favorites versus like the truly great bands.
Yeah, and I would be the flip side. I have listened to nothing but the Talking Heads for about a week. I have been getting ready for this. Thank Me to Sending Me the Angel is great. And then we have Jerry Harrison. Jerry Harrison's an interesting bloke, by the way. He's actually previously also a member of the Modern Lovers, the band that Jonathan Richman started. The band that I'm pretty sure did, obviously, Roadrunner, which is obviously proto-punk and very influential, and then he obviously joined the Talking Heads. So he's in 2 really influential bands, and obviously we get Found a Job. Found a Job's, I think, is the one song where I was like, this is the only one I think for me which blends a little bit.
Yeah. What stands out to me is like this feels like part of what Thomas Dolby was trying to get when he did the Golden Age of Wireless, because you can just hear like Thomas Dolby's vocal inflections and what he was trying to do in, like, I want to say the funner songs of the Golden Age of Wireless.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of this feeling that he was trying to grab. But, like, all of these creative people, like, know each other and hang out with each other. Yeah. Like, Thomas Dolby's played keyboard for George Clinton. And, of course, they have Parliament and Funkadelic's keyboardist right there.
Yeah.
In this. So, like, everybody kind of knows everybody in this, like, creative landscape.
Oh yeah, and particularly that because that, like, there was a lot of that New York scene when you obviously, places like CBGB's, which is obviously mentioned later in the running list. Obviously that, and obviously you were getting people like Blondie also going, oh yeah, there's this new hip hop thing, we really like this. Oh yeah, Fab Five Freddy, it became, obviously, particularly towards the sort of the middle half of the 1980s. You've got so many of these sort of musical movements, sort of like basically bumping up against each other, and you've got as you said, obviously the keyboard player from Parliament Funkadelic playing with the Talking Heads, and you got Thomas Dolby, obviously another electronic music, in terms of popular electronic music sort of thing, and you've got, it all, they all play off each other, and obviously you can see an influence go from like one end of the music scene in New York to the other, definitely. Yeah, so what obviously there's one element I do want to talk about in terms of the staging. So as like each member of the band is coming on, obviously the shot is going, the camera is pulling further out. I slight correction to earlier that it was 4 nights, not 3. Most of the film is, I think, is 2 nights, because on one of the nights they tried to film the audience, and apparently it was one of the worst Talking Heads gigs ever. Because it was just like they were distracted, the audience were having to be, really more lit than obviously I think Demi wanted to. This sort of, threw off. I mean, if a glass of water is throwing off David Byrne, having the audience brightly lit is probably not helping. So most of that material is just not.
And what Byrne did note while watching the film is just like, you never see any cameras in the film, because one night they filmed from the left, one night they filmed from the right, and another night they filmed center. So you never see the camera, so that it becomes part of the what they are doing with the stage is they want to see the people, and like they made all of the instruments matte black and the microphone as well.
Yeah.
What you see is the people, and what you don't notice is what the instruments are, or anything besides like the whites of the drum. And I think Byrne's acoustic guitar might be the exception to that, because I think he's just playing a standard wood-coloured acoustic, and I think Weymouth's bass is also, at least one of the bass. The guitars, but it's really hard to like, do that to a guitar, especially like a specific guitar that you have, which is likely expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's also dressed in black is the stage crew, because this is where we're gonna, obviously there are like, so fuck it, let's talk about it now. So there is a lot of this film, because obviously we're also we talk about Japanese anime a lot. A lot of this this gig is influenced, particularly in the staging, particularly obviously when we get to the big suit, by Japanese no drama. So the stagehands are all dressed in black, and essentially this comes from something in no drama called kuroko, which essentially are black clad stagehands. This is where, ironically enough, the ideas of ninjas wearing black also comes from. So they move scenery and props on stage, but the whole point of them is because they are dressed in black. You almost
you're not supposed to notice them. You're not meant to see through them.
But there is, this artifice to the fact you can see, like, black clad stagehands just obviously pushing, for example, like Franz's drums onto the stage, etc. It's like there is this almost dramatic element to that. Obviously, we'll get into the other sort of. So no, fuck it, we'll do it now. So the other influence on no drama is on obviously the way that the staging is done. So at the back there are these 3 or 4 large screens at the back, and obviously for much of the film they are simply reflecting the stage lights, and there's these big white canvases to reflect light. And this is where we need to briefly talk about a dramatic work. This is going to be a very strange aside. So there's a dramatic work that was produced actually, ironically, for the 1984 Olympics called "The Civil Wars: A Tree is Best Measured When It Is Down," and this actually included people like Philip Glass, Gavin Burrs, who is a British composer, librettist Harold Robert Wilson, who's another American theatre major figure in theatre, and David Byrne is responsible for these knee plays. If you've ever listened to, as I'm sure most of our listeners have done, to Philip Glass's Einstein on the Beach, the famous, bit where it goes well, we're getting to aside on aside. Essentially, David Byrne is responsible for these very Japanese-influenced sections. Now, I'm going to point out a couple of elements of this. So, there were 9 dancers wearing white doctor's smocks. Obviously the designs of the screens were modular white squares that moved fluidly to redefine the space for each scene. Ironically enough, this was then accompanied by New Orleans brass, but it does, obviously, so this thing never got presented because it was nearly a day worth of music, and it ran out of money, despite the Olympics actually basically stumping up or offering a lot of funds. It is a very strange work. I recommend going and reading, and if you can try and find the documentary about it. It's called Robert Wilson and the Civil Wars, which goes into real depth. I mean, this thing would have included David Bowie as Abraham Lincoln reciting the Gettysburg Address in Japanese. This is the sort of stuff that people are doing in the 80s. Anyway, so Byrne obviously takes a lot of, elements of this subconsciously or other, and puts this back into Stop Making Sense. Is I think my ultimate point with this.
Yeah, and it kind of fits in with the Talking Heads just because there's like the idea of commentary, but you're not sure what it is saying. So you have to kind of investigate it and kind of come to your own conclusion, which comes from, which I think is a lot of Talking Head songs. I mean, there is obviously something very much about it, but what exactly it's saying about it is kind of up to you to a certain extent. I think if there's a fault that there is, it's too cheery, it's too upbeat, and if it's commentating on something, it's like, it feels like the upbeatedness of it is like okay with it. Like, I think we're gonna get to later stuff that is obviously about things, but it's like there's a certain tonal disconnect that leads people the wrong way, but because of who the Talking Heads are, they don't seem that way just because they're David Byrne clearly looks like a person who is intelligent and really thinks about things for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that certainly on the earlier records. I think there is this sort of like this because obviously most of this material up until now has been off the band's first 3 records up to Remain in Light, and obviously the majority of the material is culled from. I think Remain in Light may only has 2 songs on this, which is surprising because obviously it would be one of their big critical success. But yeah, it's a sort of there is, particularly on the earlier Talking Heads material, there is like more there is a sense of detachment. There is a sense of what is this song about? Well, that's really up to you, says David Byrne, and then starts singing a song about peanut butter. Slippery People. Slippery People is a song about. Again, it's like,
don't
what
look
is
at me. This is one of the ones that I less remember. I just remember in the commentary track, like they do that little dance at the end.
Yeah.
It's just the rhythm guitar going over and over. And he said that was inspired by Philip Glass and how he would just like do this same thing over and over it. But of course they add the little dances at the end, and they had like the side shot of it, which just absolutely nails like the strangeness of it, which I think kind of takes away from the musical idea that Byrne was like, because he was talking about Philip Glass and all of this stuff, and you would never get a sense of that watching this, and it's just like they're just doing a funky little song, and then they're dancing to it because it's a funky little song.
Yeah. But this is where obviously Edna Holt and Lynn Mabry come in, and you get this brilliant vocal interplay between these 3 voices. And obviously, but these are complete more traditional singers, and you got David Byrne sort of like half yelp, half like sing, going up against these sort of, and it really works. You got this almost this sense with obviously this cool response, particularly on the chorus where it goes obviously, what's the matter with him, he's alright, how do you know the Lord won't mind, he's alright for love from the bottom to the top, and it's like and obviously this is where again it's sort of you have the ability of the Talking Heads to almost drop at the rest of the band to just sort of drop out, to emphasize these moments. I mean, the tightness of I think it's something that's really underappreciated. First off, this is actually also one of the first albums to be recorded entirely on digital, but that's by the by. How tight this is, considering this is at points, nearly a dozen people playing on stage, playing fairly, at points fairly complicated music, I think. Anyway, so that's Sleeping People
and
is
very
great.
physically demanding too, because they noted during these performances are about 2.5 hours long, and they cut out a lot of things, and of course there's the intermission, but they are very tired near the end of it, and you wouldn't be able to tell because it mostly focuses on Burns, who is just tireless and just has this amazing well of energy. And I don't know if that just comes from him wanting to make the performance or, whatever else.
I think that's something I think he was losing something like half, he was definitely, I think obviously because he does some very physical stuff on stage. I seem to recall some point, I think he was losing something like half a kilo in sweat, every performance, because he's throwing. There's a point where he's throwing himself around stage, and the big
one little detail. Even though part of underneath the big suit is a plastic thing, he had to gorge himself while the Tom Tom Club was out to get the suit on. And then he would have to get he would lose enough weight during that performance after gorging himself during that song to take it off.
And then we get to the first so you get them, obviously the band are sort of been filtering on, and then you get Burning Down the House, which is just this is where if you haven't twigged, this band are pretty fucking good at what they're doing. The version of
one of the great songs. I mean, people will say Psycho Killer. I'm not super big on Psycho Killer. I get it, but but this is the first massive song, because you heard it on Revenge of the Nerds soundtrack of all damn things, and just this crossed over total mainstream.
Oh, completely. I mean, so obviously as part of the promotion for this, A24 did as they do for some of their productions, an album of covers, and Paramore, who are a band I sort of vaguely know of, did a cover of this, and I don't think you can mess this song up as Paramore are a great band, and David Byrne obviously returned the favour by covering their song Hard Times and making it extremely David Byrneized. But there's also the cover by Thom Jones, where it's Thom Jones
and the Cardigans,
which makes it 2 in 2 episodes we've mentioned Thom Jones.
Tom Jones Reloaded.
We'll have to do that at some point. But no, this is if somebody wanted a sensibility of how do you explain the Talking Heads in one song? There's 3 songs. This is the first one I would go. This is the Talking. You've got that sort of street preacher sort of David Byrne vocal, where he's just he's almost yelling, singing, and then obviously the lyrics are that sort of free associative sort of thing where he's the core
kind of nonsense, and you kind of make your own meaning out of nonsense. You get there's the definite feeling they're saying something, because burning down the house, even though it's kind of taken just from a chant of Funkadelic the audience would have at their song, and it had nothing to do with the song. It was just something they would start chanting, and that kind of formed the basis for this song.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's got I think my favourite Byrne lyric, which is obviously, "Here's your bag, here's your ticket, pack your bag. It's time for jumping overboard. Transportation is here. Close enough, but not too far. Maybe you know where you are. Fighting fire with fire." And it's just and obviously Byrne is doing this. It's such I challenge, and obviously they perform this film is a favourite of midnight cinemas, but I challenge someone not to fucking dance to this thing.
Oh yeah. There was a big thing they were talking about.
Yeah.
Where they were at the Florence Film Festival, I believe, and Bernardo Bertolucci was there, and he noticed all of the people started walking up to like the space between the screen and the chairs, and they were dancing along, and like Bernardo Bertolucci was like, "This is what I have always wanted people to do to my films."
And that, because usually that's Bertolucci.
Like, sir, your later films are about an older man who is obviously you having sex with a much younger woman. I don't think people are going to be doing that to your film.
No
especially
offense.
like Besieged or something like that. That's not what. Yeah. They're not doing that to The Last Emperor.
No. The Last Emperor is a very good film, but it's not a film you can dance to. This is a film you can dance to. And they sort of followed this up with another absolutely cracking Talking Heads song, which is Life During Wartime. This is weirdly exhausting to watch.
It is weirdly exhausting for David Byrne, just because it is kind of their we didn't start the fire. Because it is just like just describing events like that are going on, like, you know, the chaos that that's going around, and it has so many lyrics that David Byrne can't remember them all at times.
It's essentially, this is like material. I feel that there is more of a, you know, this is particularly this is a song about guerrilla warfare. This is off Fear of Music, which is the band's third album, but this is like, you know, the clandestine thing, and it's like, you know, here's, you know, it's just, you know, we're at war somewhere in, you know, a post-apocalyptic United States where, you know, David Byrne has no peanut butter, and CBGB's has mysteriously obviously probably been hit by like a rocket or something, and he's carrying so many visas, and he's got no, you know, music, you know, he's like, it's just terrible, you know, what, you know, but the fact is, you know, it's got this real bounce and this real energy to it. I mean, this is one of my favourite Talking Heads songs.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you have to listen to the song 4 times and then like really get into the lyrics, and it's like, oh, that's what he's talking about. And it just, it's also commentary in itself, because it's like, it's existing as a song like during wartime, and it has to exist like this, but there's all this terrible things going on. So it's kind of like, you know, a mirror onto itself, I guess. I don't know, but it's like a lot of Talking Heads where there's levels, but you don't have to engage with it. You can just engage with it. It's a really damn good song.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, you know, actually, it's ironic because Byrne obviously mentions this ain't no this ain't no party, this ain't no disco, and Byrne goes, yeah, I'm not so sure about we like disco, we like dance music. You know, please don't burn it. That was really weird.
It came from when he, like, obviously they were in the late 70s where disco got like heavily there was this heavy backlash, and there was Disco Disaster Night, and it was possibly, you know, them trying to do violence against gay people without doing violence against gay people, but you know, that's another you know, thing.
That's
for
another
day.
episode.
But,
definitely.
So he would have to go to places where there was no disco signs, where to emphasize we were playing rock music. We were not playing that disco shit. Yeah,
even though there's Byrne himself, as he says in the liners for the Talking Heads Best Of from a few years back, saying, I'm not sure why we were like basically the anti-disco group. Obviously, you know, New Wave was regarded very much as a, you know, an antecedent and you know, a movement going back to basics. Obviously, particularly because it came from post-punk, you know. A back to basics, you know, genre. I say, for lack of a better word. Anyway, I love Life in Wartime. Also, the really exhausting thing is watching David Byrne like do a lap of the stage, which obviously would prelude his, you know, American Utopia tour, where his entire band are just mobile the entire time, which is a really good film by Spike Jonze, but is really fucking exhausting to watch after all. It's like, guys,
absolutely.
You can't just stop. and like, I mean, you know, David Byrne has a fascination, if I remember correctly, with drum lines and drum circles. He's got, you know, obviously he, you know, like many of his influences, he takes it and, you know, develops it into something else. Anyway, making Flippy Floppy. I don't remember very much about this song.
Yeah, all I know is David Byrne said, "I don't know what making Flippy Floppy means." Like it feels like just a silly little song, and it's like one of the ones where, you know, you can hear all of their influences, and then it all gets, you know, ported down to being a Talking Heads song, and it kind of just fills that space. Like I said, I don't know a lot of Talking Heads deep cuts or anything, because they kind of start running together for me, and just because my mind gets used to the way David Byrne sings, and it's just like, no matter, you know, they are influenced by everyone, and they have everything in their songs, but it essentially kind of sounds the same, and it might just be my mind locking on to David Byrne and voice, and then going, okay, this is how it's going to go for the rest of the time, which is, you know, just, I don't know. I don't know how my ADHD works. It just does what it does.
Yeah, I mean, it does have the disturbingly prescient and, you know, evergreen lyrics. Oh, I can't believe it, and people are strange, our president's crazy, did you hear what he said? Which obviously is about Ronald Reagan, but I
don't know when exactly he did the accidental radio address over a loud mic where he just said, we declared Moscow illegal. We just bombed Moscow and we declared Russia illegal, or whatever. He was joking, but he said it over a hot mic, and it got out, and there was a panic for a couple days.
Yeah, it's like one of these things like American Idiot, where it's like, you can apply these lyrics from a song from 2003 about the current / previous president, and oh dear, they're still very prescient. Oh dear. It's a good song. It is, like, I feel it's the one song on this that, like, occasionally skips my memory that it's there, because it's also parked between, like, the, you know, the two big hits from the more older stuff and the really visually interesting Swamp. So Swamp is sort of where I think the staging, like, takes on its own, like, thing, because it's like, this is this very weird German expressionism sort of lit from underneath, quite disturbing looking, like, visual thing going on.
And this is when Byrne is getting, like, a way deeper voice.
Yeah.
And, like, there's red lighting, and it's lit from underneath, and it's gonna get more and more of this for the rest of the concert. Like, it's kind of the halfway point of the film, and then they switch over. Like, he says that line, does anybody have any questions, which was overdubbed.
Yeah,
and
it's the only overdub in the entire album, actually, by the way.
Because, like, there's a point where he drops Mike near the end of the film, and you don't hear it because that's not how the film's edited. And so there are, like, a wire would bust, and there would be a hum in the sound set, and they would do some overdubs on that. But they try to keep it natural, but obviously, like, live performances are going to have little idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, and the fact that it's obviously also edited together from 3 days of footage. Side note, that's why, you know, Chris Franz is obviously so the rest of the band are dressed in, you know, very neutral greys, you know, to, you know, light, you know, khakis. And then you got the Chris Franz sitting on his drum kit with a turquoise polo shirt. That's because basically he had, obviously, like the rest of the band, he had garb for the thing, which obviously was a very more neutral thing. I will try and see if there's, like, photographs of this. Obviously, this being 40 years plus ago, it is obviously, there are not many, like, photographs by people of this period. You know, But basically, his laundry did not turn up in time, and therefore Chris Franz is stuck wearing a turquoise polo shirt for the entire gig. Because for 4 days, because obviously you have to keep them in the same stuff for consistency. Otherwise, it's going to be every so often Chris Franz is going to polo shirt is just going to completely change colour.
Yeah, it's there was a live performance for the Midnight where they did one of their songs, and just the guitarist, it's supposed to be like one live performance, but the guitarist changes his shirt like every 3 or 4 seconds.
We've edited this together from several takes, can you tell? I mean, yeah, it's very much, it's very smartly done, because there is apparently footage. Obviously, they are using 4 days worth of 3 and a bit days worth of footage. And it's you cannot, you only, if you're looking, there's obviously the artifice, and I think obviously a lot of concert films these days, obviously, because you can have really small cameras, probably can get away with this a lot more by shooting an entire gig start to finish. Back in the 1980s, obviously, to shoot particularly on this low of a light level in some places, you've got big cameras and big lenses. You are having to shoot with something the size of a small truck. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Where were we?
We're at What a Day That Was.
What a Day That Was, which is the one David Byrne song that is actually not by the Talking Heads. This was from his soundtrack album to The Catherine Wheel, which was a dance project by Twyla Tharp, who is an American choreographer. This is obviously again collaborating with Eno, but so this is where we need to talk very, very briefly about the editing, because there is more material that did not end up in this film. So one of those is a song called Big Business, which is by David Byrne, and also from the Catherine Wheel. Big Business sort of basically slots in later in the soundtrack. We've also missed out Cities, which is a song from Fear of Music, which is a nice song. It's a really good song. It's Tina Weymouth's bass playing at her best. But there is some of the material ended up on the cutting room floor, and has only recently been added back to the VHS cut, which was done by obviously it was the VHS. Demi did an alternative cut for VHS and Laserdisc. And then obviously when the Talking Heads did the 40th anniversary re-release of Stop Making Sense on the Blu-ray and DVD, which is obviously done by A24, they recut and re-put these sequences back in as an extra, because why not? It's a it fits very nicely into the rest of the Talking Heads sound, because it's a lot of that sound is driven by David Byrne. Nice biblical allusions in it.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's just like it's another one of those songs, because it wasn't like designed to be with the Talking Heads. It kind of just gets kind of faded into the background and like something like that, and my mind doesn't recognize it. Like I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know quite what it is. I don't know.
I mean, I really like the keyboard parts on this, because you got the keyboards. So the keyboards on this obviously are fairly old school key. There's obviously this stuff has to travel. This stuff obviously there's about and you get this particularly from Warhol, who obviously by this point was like a master of making this thing do weird and exciting noises for Parliament Funkadelic. Some really weird synthesizer noises.
Yeah, they got like wah, 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 wow. I mean, I
that's
guess it would be a wah-wah keyboard.
yeah.
Is that how you would describe it?
I don't know. It basically sounds like he's running it through something, but I don't know enough about keyboards and MIDI control. We're getting this is way before MIDI controllers anyway, but this is the synthesizers are this sort of really interesting element, and obviously a lot of it was brought into the band by obviously principally played synthesizers in the Roxy music. But, there's always this sort of there's always, even at the most soul searching, this playfulness, I think, to Talking Heads, which I think some people occasionally forget about, or it's slightly disarming occasionally. It's like you got this strange noise going on in the background.
Yeah, it's like they're funky and they have this bright synthesizer noise that goes over like the neutral colors and fits. I mean, that strangely fits.
Definitely.
It's this band that every music nerd will be seriously defensive about, except for the ones that try to go against everything.
Yeah, I mean, but you're gonna get somebody who disagrees with any genre. And then we get to this was through the place Naive Melody, and oh god, I love this song. This is there's. Sorry.
Yeah, it's nice. I just want to say it's nice.
Yeah. I love this song to absolute bits. It's just like one of those. So this is ostensibly a love song. It's a love song written by a guy who doesn't really quite obviously it's just somebody who's trying to understand how love works, and the music is very simple. I mean, for a lot of this, if I remember correctly, the band, the musicians actually basically swapped everything. So Tina Weymouth is obviously playing a short model guitar on this. I think the only person who was actually playing the original instrument on the original recording is actually Franz, because I don't think anybody else in the band knew how to play drums. But it's that it's got that that really nice little synthesizer riff, that that sort of sound, and it's just this is in the middle of speaking in tongues, and yeah, it's just a really sweet this sweet sort of slightly offbeat love song about trying to understand love, and it's and what makes it particularly on something is the staging. So by this point, they've obviously turned, all the house lights are largely down, and have the single lamp, which is obviously on stage, and obviously light the light in the main sort of thing, and the staging when Doc Burns. So it's obviously midway through the song, towards the end of the song, Burns starts to dance with this lamp. And I don't know, there's something quite disarming about this, because obviously he's got almost this expression of wonder, which actually really matches, the sensibility of the lyrics, and I think it's actually where the staging of it is really quite just. Apparently, Byrne drops them constantly.
Absolutely. One of the nights the bulbs will burst. They had to make it taller because it would drop or it would snap or something like that. This looks. It's kind of like a Buster Keaton film.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
This is supposed to look like this was just a spur of the moment thing, but it is absolutely planned.
Yeah.
I mean, some nights there are improvisations and shit goes wrong.
Yeah.
But this is all planned, but it looks spontaneous, and that just adds to the staging of it. And obviously they picked the best staging to where it's just oh, it's about to drop. Nope. Here it goes.
It's caught it. Yeah. this dance with this light, and it's just that it's really quite
And it really feels like an extension of Byrne himself, because you'll see it all throughout. He has these bursts of energy that seems like sporadic and like just out of nowhere, but it is all planned. It is all completely controlled. And obviously, it's because it's a film and they can edit the controlled parts together.
Yeah.
but
I also
there is that feeling throughout the entire film.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth pointing out, like, a lot of what Byrne is doing is, obviously this is we go back to Kabuki, is, reference is taken from a Japanese art form called Buto, Butoh, where it's basically, this dance where you throw yourself around the stage, and what he basically does with, because there was what I think people obviously misinterpret is there is a choreographer for every single thing, every little move he is making on stage. I'm trying to actually now find the choreographer for this. 1 second. There was absolutely a choreographer for this. If I find it, I'll put a note below saying who it was. But this is choreographed.
Although yes, Byrne did kind of do some of the moves on his own, especially when he got the big suit and like how once he figured out what he could do with it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there is a sense of there is obviously a lot of stuff that is this is what this is what we got. I mean, Byrne was involved in almost every single visual aspect of this. There is it's not just the fact of like someone's just made a decision somewhere in the Talking Heads management going, oh, we don't really need a stage set. We don't really. No, this is deliberate. But the sense that this looks verite, the sense that this looks authentic is, absolutely masterful. There's this. It looks like a spontaneous, almost throughout a sort of spontaneous, choice to do this, and it's not, and it's it's so cleverly done, to be able to do this. Anyway, you may find yourself
at once in a lifetime.
This is the second song I would introduce people to Talking Heads by. It is one of my favourite songs of all time. It is like, absolutely
the song that defines them.
Yeah. It is just like, it's the Talking Heads song. I mean, it's just like, this is where, almost all their influences come together. You've got early hip hop, you've got Afrobeat, you've got, sampling and looping, and and it's sort of like the Byrne describes this in a later interview as the band trying and failing to play funk. Obviously you got Tina Weymouth's bass line, boom, 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 underneath, and it's like, this is, and the lyrics to this are, the Talking Heads raison d'etre sort of writ large. It's this half street preacher, half sort of like, existential crisis. This it's one of them. It's become mimetic now that somebody.
It is like this 80s, like this is what you have projected upon yourself, which Girlfriend is Better will do a little bit more on this, but what the 80s has projected upon you, or what the past few decades has, what you want in your life, and then suddenly questioning what you want in your life. And David Byrne is obviously doing a street preacher voice like that, specifically like Southern Pentecostal as he says, preachers who like when they're preaching, it suddenly becomes like music. But they talked about the devil more than they talked about God, and just putting this in this modern frame where there's this standard of life, and there's this morality of life which is, you know, in the preacher voice, and then there's just this sudden thing of questioning everything, and it feels like this internal monologue, and it's just like what the hell has happened to me?
Yeah, the way I've always described it is like waking up from a sweat for the American dream, going, what the fuck has happened? You know, it's like this sense of like all this materialism, all, you know, all the sort of things. Oh, you know, grow up and have a wife and have a car and, you know, have children, and like, and you go, well, how did we get here? As the song goes, you know, how do I work this? You know, and you know, I mean, the opening verse of this is just it is almost like this antithetical, this sort of this response line by line to sort of, you know, the basically American life, and American, particularly obviously life under Reagan, you know, line by line. You may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world. You may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile. You may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. And, you know, and I'm sorry, this is probably, I would say, within the top 10 like greatest songs ever written, because this is just, you know, again, it's one of these things that feels, you know, like it has, you know, like some old piece of, like, you know, American, you know, folk song that's been carried down from, you know, from the father, you know, or, you know, it's, you know, frankly, almost the cadence is almost biblical, you know, to bring this sense of.
And during the performance, like, David Byrne puts on some fake glasses, pair of black frame glasses, and he becomes this entirely different character. And he just becomes this everyman or preacher. Like, it's really weird. I got a Malcolm X feeling off of his glasses, just the glasses. Obviously, nothing else, but there is that religious affiliation with this kind of like black framed, you know, simple glasses that are still, you know, fashionable and noticeable in a way, I guess.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And it's got obviously the greatest bridge in probably 80s music history, which is the same as it ever was. Which I mean,
in the film, he just repeats it, the same thing he does in the music video, which is just stops and like he shakes his head like it's just like it's setting in.
Yeah, that sort of jerky movement, that sort of, you know, this almost a religious fit, which you almost, you know, it's worth actually saying that, you know, obviously for the original music video in 1981, this was obviously, you know, this was using footage of televangelists and, you know, tribes and sects and people in trances. You know, the music video for this is great. This is better. This is my favourite version of Once in a Lifetime, because it's just, you know, what is this but a preacher preaching to his flock.
And this is where the aspect of the live performance sets in, because it's just like you see his sweat, you see like he has been going through a performance all day, so he obviously has this fatigue, even though Byrne is the one who least shows fatigue. Even he's getting a little tired.
Yeah.
So you can feel like what this song is trying to do while watching him.
Definitely. This sort of, you know, this sort of fervor to the thing, and you know, this is the version of Once in a Lifetime, and then, like, this performance is for, I think, a good handful of songs, the versions of the, you know, the ultimate versions of these Talking Heads songs. So now we have cut from the film Big Business, which is another song from Byrne's the Catherine Wheel soundtrack. It's fine, it's more David Byrne. Isimbra, which is what I am surprised Isimbra got cut, because it is one of the best Talking Heads. This is like, again, this is like, you know, that sort of happy medium between these art school kids and Afro pop, and it's this sort of liquid this where basically a bunch of slightly smart aleck New York school, New York art school kids, who are listening, reading Dada poetry by Hugo Ball sort of meets, the guitar work of Fela Kuti. Also used, actually, if I remember correctly, in the most recent Spider-Man film, which is a very strange, moment. Nice to see Talking Heads name checked. I mean, they are a New York band. And
I haven't seen any of the non-animated new Spider-Man things. It's Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I haven't seen it either. I just know it's in there because.
Okay.
Anyway. And then David Byrne has to go off stage, and it's time for the Tom Tom Club,
which is essentially the Talking Heads without David Byrne.
Yeah. Genius of Love.
It's a very it's very different, obviously. I mean, not just because of the lyrics, but it just becomes this like late 70s like pop aesthetic. Like, it feels like this either was this samples or takes ideas from a lot of other things, and then this in turn got sampled in other things. Like the song I like it most closely resonates with is like CNC Factory. What's this word called love? And that they probably took some ideas from the vocals, and there's like that song that was sampled for Fantasy, the late 90s song.
Mariah Carey song.
The Mariah Carey song, yes.
Yeah.
And then but this doesn't feel like the source of that. It feels like this late 70s pop pastiche, and then there's the lyrics like, especially like, I just got out of prison, I'm gonna go have some fun. And
oh god. It has got some very, what you gonna do when you get out of jail?
I don't think it gels, but it certainly stands out because it is different from everything else in this film, but it still fits somehow.
Yeah, and there is like, I mean, the riff is just like, that is ironically enough. So obviously this name checks, Jesus and Number name checks like a load of like black music, and it's in probably you probably would not be able to make this today because whilst it pays tributes to it, it's like this is very white people trying to, particularly Chris Francis' case, particularly on the version on Stop Making Sense, this is a very, very white guy trying to rap, and no, not like in like a Vanilla Ice way. It's like this
is obviously music from a lot of black people that is being funneled through like white intellectual people, and they're trying to have some fun with it. They're trying to make some art with it. I mean, it works in a way, it doesn't work in a way. I don't think it like gels as a piece.
No,
but
it's
there
a charming
are nice parts about it.
Yeah. The chorus is very nice, and I think Tima Weymouth is underrated as a vocalist. It's charming enough, and certainly black music had black music and hip hop, had no problem taking this straight back and going, no, this is a really good beat, we're going to use that. I mean, as soon as like 1982, Grandmaster Flash, who was basically, and the Furious Five, who were basically like the progenitors of like modern hip hop, and obviously a lot of it, Sam were going, yeah, we'll sample that sounds great, thanks Tina, thanks Chris, we'll have this back, thank you. It's obviously this was also a fairly big hit. Adrian Bellew, who obviously would play live with Talking Heads, obviously also adapts, has some guitar work on it. I mean, we could be here for half an hour talking about Adrian Bellew's role in music. Basically, though, this is a chance for David Byrne to go and change, because it is time for the big suit. For the big suit. Here he comes now. Yeah, it's the big suit is. The big suit is David Byrne is the big suit is David Byrne. It is. This is indelible. I think, as we spoke a little bit earlier, this is indelibly linked.
One of the most iconic of iconic things.
Yeah, it's like, this is probably up there with Freddie Mercury's white vest and Elvis's Vegas jumpsuits in terms of the most famous clothing in rock. It's like, this is talking heads to a lot of people. And this is where, ironically enough, Japanese theatre comes back into thing.
Yes.
So this is essentially a no costume, and it's a pastiche, and it is a satirical garment in itself. Essentially, it is a large business suit. This is this is American corporatism to be a big costume for David Byrne. I'm going to put a really nice article I found about it, downward. And it's obviously, it is essentially a Gail Blacker, who would actually be the person to put the suit together, would regard it as more of an architectural project and essentially build it like a tent.
There were two versions of it. There was one that was kind of more of a normal suit, and then there was one that had like plastic stuff underneath that supported it. And Byrne greatly wanted the plastic one more, because then he started playing around with it, and it started getting the wobbly, because it supported it, but it wasn't all like glued and just like stiff. You could move it. You could do all sorts of things, which David Byrne does with it.
Yeah, that his movement in this is so weird and so beautiful. He's got his great flapping drifts of it, and it's like the other sort of major element that Byrne sort of goes into it. So obviously he's interviewed into it and goes, what's with the big suit? And it's like, obviously. So David, this is from an interview a few years ago. David Byrne says, "I was in Japan between tours, and I was checking out traditional Japanese theatre, kabuki, bunraku, which is puppet, and was wanting what to wear on our upcoming tour. A fashion designer, which is later identified as Jürgen Lell, who I don't have much information on about, said, well, David, everything is bigger on stage."
Yeah.
But it's like, it's this strange, it fits Byrne, because Byrne is, it makes Byrne's head look small. I mean, it just pops out looking like something out of the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie, one of the Goombas. It's just like,
yes.
What, David, your head is there, and your shoulders are 2 feet apart. What's going on?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the directors were going for.
I wouldn't be
surprised. Music video directors, and they didn't do Max Headroom, so they would be, very punk and very into this stuff. So, the commentary as the Goomba, as the everyman, turned into a goon-stepping troupe, I guess would. But does this need to be in the Super Mario Brothers movie? No. But
no. But it is for some reason.
It is, but and also in the commentary he adds that he might have mistaken him for everything's bigger on stage, so he just drew a little head with a big suit, and that's kind of how it became. So he might have mistook what he was saying to I have to make the suit bigger.
The suit must be bigger. The suit must be bigger. Yeah. So this is for the amount of time this is in the film in full. It is very, he basically does one song in this, which is "Girlfriend Is Better," and it's he's just flapping around in these great drifts of suit, and then the suit is off, and it's where
halfway into "Take Me to the River," sometime he just gets rid of it, and he has to, because he is hot. He keeps the big pants, but he's, it's removed at one point. But yeah, it is about 8 minutes. We'll give it 8 minutes of screen time in this about hour and a half movie.
Yeah, which is not a lot of screen time, but then again, Darth Vader was only on screen for 8 minutes, so. Girlfriend is Better is another really good Talking Heads song, and it's...
Yeah, it's probably my favorite Talking Heads song, because it just... It's again, it is this artist thing. I mean, it might be, like, too cheery, because... Like, I've got a girlfriend that's better than that. It is sung in complete triumph, but it is also, with the big suit and everything, it is a commentary on, like, how, like, bigger people, like, it's people trying to be bigger and better than they are in this world, and how we make everything a competition or something like that, which is, like, still going on today with, like, our vehicles and all, whatever the fuck. But
yeah, exactly.
It's like how we have to make ourselves bigger than what we are in our, like, public face. And it has become a competition to the point of ludicrousy, which is, I think, fits the big suit rather well.
Yeah, I think of all the songs you would to wear the big suit on, I think it is the song that suits the big suit best. If I'm gonna stop saying suit now. But this is, it's very much this sort of, like, bigger is better, and, this sort of, like, again, this sort of driving sense of, America. And, obviously this is also...
There is this note underneath it that who took the money away, and it's just like, oh, you spent all of your money on this, and...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously this ends with the lyrics, as we get older and stop making sense, you won't make her finding love, and stop making sense, stopping making sense, da 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 da. And this name's
stop
the
making sense.
Stop making sense. And we reach the final two. So this is really the victory lap. I think this is like the Talking Heads going.
Yeah,
yep.
we have reached the. This has been the climax, and now we are at the kind of ending where everything, gets evened out and you're ready to go, but not without, like, Cross-Eyed and Painless, which is, like, one of their fastest songs.
Yeah.
To, like, leave you out with a, skipping your step. But we do have Take Me to the River, which is just...
one of the greatest cover versions of all time.
Okay.
It's just like, obviously, this is the fucking Billy Bass song. This is like... This is the the river, and it's like the way that the Talking Heads take this in is just, it's this on the live. So this is the one cut that the CD version continues to do. So there's a point at which obviously Byrne introduces the entire band, and it's fine, but obviously it's like it's this groove that the song goes on, and it's sort of, I feel like it's it's the scale of this is like surprise. This is like where Demi starts to do is a really big widescreen shots, and obviously everything is big and maximalist, and even if Byrne is out of the big suit, it's still a big or big, almost sort of gospel. You obviously get the vocals on the top
and
of it, which is
everybody's dancing together.
Yeah, the energy on this is just glorious. I mean, it's just like yeah.
My only thing about Take Me to the River is I don't know what it's doing. I mean, there are other things where it's not explicitly saying, but you pick it up. I don't. Is it just making a really nice cover of something that feels like Southern Baptist, and he can pull it off because he has that voice? But I don't know. My mind doesn't know what to do with this song. Is my problem.
Oh, definitely. I definitely think like but Byrne has gone. Well, what's bigger than the original version? Well, why don't we just gospel it up and stick some funky synthesizers on it? I think this is something that's in the original song. I mean, Byrne certainly says, this is a song that combines teenage lust with baptism. This is, after all, a song written by a guy who, Al Green, it's worth pointing out, was a pastor, or is a pastor, still very much with us. But this is very much a song that carries that line between "I love you, baby" and "I love you, Jesus." It's one of these
Yes.
songs that, the man is an ordained pastor, and obviously there was, at the point where the Talking Heads version came out, like another 3 versions in the charts, including one by 70s rock also ran Foghat, if anyone remembers them.
Yes.
And Brian, and ironically Brian Ferry, who obviously Brian Eno knows very well, given he was in the same band with him. It's a great cover. And then Demi does something a little bit weird. So for the up until this point, he has obviously, for the logistical reasons we've spoken earlier, he's not photographed the audience, and it's the first time the camera almost turns and goes, yeah, this has been a concert all along. This is a communal thing, because this is like cross-eyed. This obviously brings us to cross-eyed and painless, which is really fast.
Yeah, it's one of their lesser known songs, and they even noted it's weird, but it has the end of the concert vibe. It is, we're going to send you out with this
extremely fast
high energy and this feeling, this invigorating feeling that you've watched something great, which you have. But it's that's kind of the thinking.
Mm-hmm. Which is particularly ironic, because I think, if I remember correctly, Cross-Eyed and Painless, I think he's like the first or second track on Remain in Light, which is a great record. But it's like the speed on this is, obviously they really do go through this like the absolute clappers, and it's obviously this, again, this free associative, sort of things. Facts are simple and facts are straight, etc., etc. This is that sort of neuroticism, and I feel like you have to end the concert with this, because it's like, there's this, which is ironic, because this is very, as I said, it's a song early on the thing, but it's that,
and it's a way to showcase the band as well, because there are all these little instrumental parts where you can just see what they're doing, and they can, here's, even though they introduced the band earlier, it's just like, here's the band, here's what they do, and it shows you what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic way to end, and you sort of see, shots of the audience responding to this, and and the groove, and it almost sort of symbolically slices. Obviously, we for the rest of the film, we have been the audience, and the Talking Heads have been the band, the performers, and it almost goes 180, and almost goes, takes this barrier, this symbolic barrier down between band and this is going, almost bringing this sort of sense of this artifice of, this is a controlled environment down. Here is the spontaneity. Here is the real life and unpredictability of a live audience.
And again, it's about the energy. It picks up here's the energy of the whole thing as we wrap it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And we've gone on longer than the movie officially.
We've gone on later than the movie. So we'll just talk very quickly. I mean, this is hugely influential. This is, there are not many rock and roll, music, concert movies. I think you could basically go, yeah, we're going to release this 40 years later, and audiences are going to flock to this, and we're going to get to a point where we bring the 4 members of the Talking Heads, people who've been at each other's throats, for the last 25 years, back into a room, and they're going to be able to sit and talk about this film, and we're going to be able to release. There is very few documents of any other band. I mean, I consider perhaps, unstaged, possibly you could do this with the David Lynch and Duran thing, but I think that's more Lynch's role. Woodstock.
That's I've watched it. It's
Yeah.
Lynch just doing a thing. I mean it. And they took it off YouTube. It wasn't sponsored by YouTube, and like YouTube just like took it away the moment it could.
Yeah.
Like you can't watch it anymore.
No, that's a pity. Well, as I said,
Yeah.
there are certain, band performances, things that you could probably make the argument for. Woodstock's one of them. Last Waltz is definitely another one. Both of those are, by the way, involving Martin Scorsese. Live at Pompeii, you could possibly do. That is certainly, Pink Floyd at the cusp of ending one era and beginning, the thing, and is very beautifully filmed, and would probably have another fan base. We can obviously go and we can point our hand to, we can go, well, a certain young musician is currently doing that with her film of the decade, the decades
the
tour.
Eras tour.
The Eras tour, and obviously the film that she put
I
which
still need to watch that. I just
Yeah.
haven't had time.
which at point of recording, obviously that is the highest grossing concert movie of all time, and I can definitely imagine in the decades to come that will be a cinematic document which people will come back and will go, this is something worthy of reappraisal, and this is a musician and as I think, to be fair, the Talking Heads were, and I think I think the band were, and certainly I think Pink Floyd were in an imperial state of being where they are basically, if not the most influential band, the most important band on the planet, bloody well close to it.
Yeah. And Imperial does fit like Taylor Swift, because if you survive, Reputation, and you are not only still alive, you are the biggest damn thing in the world. You are invincible. You are untouchable.
We live in
You
fear
are
of
royalty.
Reputation.
With saying no opinion about her music or whatever else. I like a few of her songs, and that is as far as I go, as far as my opinion, and I don't really have a negative opinion.
No,
it's just she exists in the popular thing, and I'm a 42-year-old man, and that's how it goes. And it doesn't reach me as other things reach me, and they're good songs, but this is not me, and it's not supposed to be me, and it's supposed to be people who relate to Taylor Swift. So have that, and I'm not gonna. I have not been on the attacking end. I have not been on the praise be queen end. It's just something you have to respect, I guess.
Yeah, I would echo that, and it's it doesn't matter really what your opinion of her is. She is, as I think, to be fair, the Talking Heads are certainly doing in Stop Making Sense, is a document for the ages of what an extremely talented musician or musicians were at the height of the undeniable height of their powers. This is a fantastic film. As I said, it is excellent that A24 has brought this back into. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to struggle to remain popular. The Talking Heads are a band to have a devoted fan base. David Byrne has since gone on to do work as interesting and as idiosyncratic as he's done in obviously the Talking Heads. The other three members of the band have gone on and done material at their thing. They are a band I feel that have it's very good that A24 has brought it to certainly to a younger audience. I feel perhaps I feel it has helped them, but at the same time I feel this film is always going to be respected, and the way that this concert is shot and performed and orchestrated and staged is always going to remain influential. It's a fixed point in time that music and performance and cinema sort of flow around.
Yeah. They are a music nerd starter kit band.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you have to know these people.
You have to. Yeah.
And the people they're around, because obviously there's
people,
Brian
yeah.
Eno. Obviously there's Parliament Funkadelic.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and like Tom, you don't
Adrian.
really have to. I guess you can know Thomas Dolby the person, but you don't have to know him as like the performer, I guess. But
No. Yeah. And that's and there's that whole CBGB scene, and you get back into sort of really interesting things like New York punk, and you get into television and the Patti Smith group. This is a gate. This, if nothing else, I hope this is a gateway for younger fans. People we're talking realistically. 20, the Generation Z and etc. Who will watch this film and go, these people are really cool. What else have they made? Who else did they know? What else can this tell us about the music of that period? And I feel if A24 manages to get one person of that demographic to watch this film, because obviously they are a distributor which obviously has a what's the word I'm looking for here? A demarcation, a reputation among younger viewers for the work they put out.
Younger viewers, younger upper class white viewers. Like, I'm in a film club, and like A24.
Oh god.
Like, there's this thing where it's the perfect A24 film.
Oh god.
That is just. Like, and there's even been like backlash of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I liked
as this
that.
perfect. Oh, I love that film. I absolutely love that film. It was my favorite film of that year. But it's like gets this reputation as, oh, this is like a rich white person's like view of like, a diverse film about something.
Well, there's I mean, bear in mind, obviously, both of the directors of Everything Everywhere All at Once are both, American, obviously Asian. So they are, nobody.
I know.
Absolutely,
There is that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will point out that this, because of A24, and because obviously they re-released Stop Making It, even in my little, local cinema, which is, I wouldn't say is art house. It's a multiplex cinema. It's a 12-screen multiplex. It's not the sort of place, that's going to show art house cinema. We got a week solid, 2 times a day, screenings of Stop Making Sense. That is the sort of, where, the good point of getting a distributor who has a canny ability. We're going to sit here all night and talk about the positives and negatives of A24, having a boutique film releaser, doing, essentially carving off it. So, we could sit here for hours, and, much cleverer people and much more cinematically literate people than us have written much more engaging text than that. I feel this is, if you can get a film like this, released in, a run-of-the-mill southeast UK multiplex for a week solid, you're doing something right. You're doing something right, and I feel this is a film that will stand the test of time. It is basically the perfect rock, the perfect concert.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I listen to more than 2 songs of the Talking Heads, it kind of blends together, and my attention wanes. Like, it's a great movie. It's a good movie for me just because of how my mind processes things, and like weirdly, I appreciated the movie more when I was just listening to the commentary track and just watching it.
Yeah.
Because it's a movie you can just watch and like really get a kick out of, because there's just so much there that's fun and creative and neat.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, how many rock and roll documentaries, how many concert movies can you say, yeah, we've got something interesting enough and engaging enough to have 5 people sit around and talk, over it, to go, this is what we did with this creative decision and this is what we did, that's something quite special, I think.
Yep.
Anyway, we have talked for longer than the runtime of this about the Talking Heads. We have one more anniversary episode this year, I think.
Yeah, The Wall, I believe.
The Pink Floyd's The Wall. This should be interesting.
Yeah, well, which is another movie album
thing.
combo and like concert probably
Yeah.
that will have. Even though I don't know if they have much video from the concert, but I do
we'll
remember.
get into that. We'll get into that. When
Yeah,
we
we'll
talk
get
about
into the whole concert, which was its own experience.
Yeah, we might talk about the film in passing, definitely. Certainly the album. That will be in, I think, late November. We will get back to numbered episode shortly. We haven't forgotten about My Chemical Romance. That will be recorded.
Certainly
hopefully.
you haven't.
Certainly I haven't. Certainly, and after that we will be talking about Bacano. That only leads me to ask, has anybody got any questions?
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was. We'll see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.